to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place where your mind can soften and your body can finally rest. Tonight, you'll drift into a gentle evening where rain taps the window panes like a patient lullaby, and the world grows kinder with every breath. Let your eyes grow heavy in their own time with no effort at all. Settle into the shape of comfort, whatever that means for you right now. Feel the support beneath you, steady and forgiving, as if it has been waiting all day for this moment to hold you. Inhale slowly, as though you're drawing in warmth. Exhale as though you're letting go of weight you were never meant to carry into the night. Let your shoulders loosen, your jaw unclench, your hands rest without gripping. If your thoughts are busy, that's all right. Let them be busy for a while. You don't have to chase them or solve them. You can simply notice them. And then let the sound of the rain become the gentlest thing you pay attention to. Outside, the weather is calm in its own way. The rain doesn't rush. It doesn't demand. It arrives softly, bead by bead, and settles into a rhythm on the glass. You can imagine it now. Each small tap on the window pane, each faint slide of water, tracing a winding path downward, catching light and turning it into a brief, silvery shimmer before it disappears. Breathe in again, a little deeper if you can. And as you breathe out, feel as though you're sinking a little further into rest. The room around you can fade, the edges of the day can blur. All you need to do is listen and let the story carry you, the way rain carries reflections across a darkened street. And somewhere in a town that loves quiet evenings, a window glows. In that town, the streets were narrow and old, paved with stones that held the warmth of past summers, even when autumn arrived. Trees lined the sidewalks, their leaves turned soft with rain, their branches swaying gently as if they were breathing too. The sky was a deep, clouded gray, not heavy with storm, but full of steady patience. It was the kind of weather that made lamps seem friendlier and made every home feel like a small sanctuary. At the end of one street, where the stones curved around a sleepy little square, stood a modest building with a steep roof and ivy that climbed along the bricks. The ivy was glossy from the rain, each leaf cupping tiny droplets like a careful hand. Behind one of the upstairs windows, a warm light rested, golden and calm, as if the room itself had learned how to glow softly. Inside that room, someone named Elian had made a simple ritual of rainy nights. Elian wasn't in a hurry to do much of anything. The day had been ordinary in the best way. A few quiet errands, a visit to a small bookshop with a bell over the door, a slow walk home beneath an umbrella that turned the world into a private little space. Now evening had arrived, like a blanket settling over shoulders. The room was filled with gentle comforts. A worn armchair sat near the window, angled so a person could watch the rain without pressing too close to the glass. A small table nearby held a mug that released a faint curl of steam, smelling softly of herbs and honey. A knitted throw lay folded over the arm of the chair, textured and familiar. The floorboards creaked only when they wanted to, the way old houses do, speaking in soft, friendly sounds. The rain on the window panes had its own language. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Then the quiet swish of a droplet sliding down. Sometimes the drops gathered and became heavier, a slow little river that traced a path along the glass, blurring the view outside and making the streetlights look like painted halos. Elian stood for a moment near the window, hands resting lightly on the sill, watching the world beyond. The square outside was empty, except for the occasional passerby moving under a coat or umbrella, footsteps softened by wet stone. The fountain in the center of the square, usually lively with laughter and splashing in warmer months, now held a calm pool that reflected the lamps in trembling circles. The rain made everything more forgiving. It softened corners. It quieted edges. It turned distance into something dreamy. Elian had always liked that. There was something about rain against glass that made the mind unclench. It made thoughts slow down, as though each raindrop carried a tiny bit of worry away. Elian moved back into the room and with unhurried care placed another log into the small stove in the corner. The fire inside responded with a gentle crackle and a slow bloom of heat. Not sharp or intense, just enough to make the air feel held. On a shelf near the stove there were small objects collected over time. A smooth stone shaped like a small moon, a glass vial filled with dried lavender, a wooden box that smelled faintly of cedar. None of these things were valuable in the way people usually meant. They were valuable because they reminded Elian of quiet moments. A walk near a river, an afternoon in a meadow, a friend's gift wrapped in simple paper. As Elian settled into the armchair, the room seemed to settle too, as if everything had been waiting for this particular kind of stillness. The mug was lifted, warm between palms. A sip tasted gentle, a little sweet, soothing on the throat. Outside, rain continued its patient tapping. Elian opened a book but didn't read right away. The pages rested open like a suggestion rather than a task. Instead, Elian listened. The window pane carried the rain's rhythm like a drum made of glass and hush. There were moments when the drops grew slightly faster, then slowed again. The wind occasionally shifted, nudging the rain into a different angle, so the tapping moved from one part of the window to another, as though the rain were wandering across the glass, curious and calm. As Elian listened, something subtle happened, something that always seemed to happen on nights like this. The world felt closer to dreaming, not the kind of dreaming that comes with strange, sharp images, but the kind that arrives like fog over a lake. The mind begins to drift. The heart becomes quiet. Even the air seems to hum with softness. Elian's eyelids lowered for a moment, not quite sleep, just rest. And in that gentle near sleep, Elian began to imagine the rain as more than weather. There were stories, after all, about rain. In the town, old people sometimes spoke of a particular kind of rainfall that arrived only when the world needed extra calm. They called it the window rain, because it had a fondness for glass, as though it liked to tap little messages against the barrier between inside and out. The stories said the window rain was kind. It didn't soak you through in anger. It didn't flood streets or lash trees. It simply came with a steady rhythm that matched a relaxed heartbeat. It was said that if you listened long enough, the window rain could teach you how to let go. Elian didn't know whether to believe such things, but the rain did seem to have a presence. It felt attentive, almost as if it knew it was being heard. As the evening deepened, the room grew quieter. The fire made a gentle sound and the mug was set down. The book remained open, its words waiting patiently. Elian leaned back, wrapped the knitted throw around shoulders, and listened again. Tap, tap. A faint, soothing percussion. And then beneath that familiar rhythm, something else seemed to appear. A softer sound, like a whisper carried through water. It was so subtle that it might have been imagination. It might have been the way the rain gathered and slid. It might have been the wind shifting through leaves. But it seemed to form a pattern, a delicate suggestion, as if the rain were speaking in the smallest possible way. Elian turned slightly toward the window, curiosity slow and gentle, not bright or demanding. The light in the room reflected on the glass, and beyond that reflection the night hovered, blurred by rain. In the pane there were trails, thin, shining paths where drops had traveled downward. They overlapped and separated like threads. Some drops met others and became heavier, then moved together. Some drifted alone, quietly tracing their own route. Elian watched one droplet, a small one, perched near the top of the glass. It hesitated, as if deciding. Then it began to slide. It moved slowly, collecting tiny beads along the way, growing a little larger as it descended. It passed behind the reflection of the room's warm light, turning that light into a soft gold smear, and then continued downward until it joined another trail and vanished into the lower edge of the window frame. Something about that droplet's journey was mesmerizing. It had no destination that mattered. It simply moved because it was time to move. It gathered what it needed and let the rest go. Elian's breathing slowed, matching that quiet movement. The rain, as if pleased, tapped a little more steadily. Outside, the street lamps cast their light onto the stones, and the stones shone like dark mirrors. A cat crossed the square, moving quickly and lightly, ears pinned back against the wet. It disappeared beneath a bench, and the square returned to stillness. In the room, Elian's thoughts began to loosen, slipping away from their usual loops. Work, plans, small worries. These things faded into the soft background. They were still there, somewhere, but they felt less urgent, like papers on a desk that could be tidied another day. The rain kept tapping, patient as ever. And then, as the night leaned further into quiet, something gently changed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden flash, no sharp sound, just a subtle shift, like the moment you realize you've been drifting for a while. Leon noticed that the glass of the window no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like a veil, a thin, shimmering membrane between the warm room and a world made of rain and shadow and soft light. The trails on the glass began to look like pathways, as if each droplet was drawing a map. Elian leaned forward slightly, eyes calm, and watched as the rain traced its delicate lines. Somewhere in the patterns, something seemed to invite attention. A small curve, a meeting of trails, a tiny shape formed by overlapping water. It looked almost like an archway. Not a perfect one, not an obvious one, but a suggestion. Two long trails curving inward, meeting at the top, with a clear space beneath. The clear space was darker than the rest of the pane, as if the night behind it had deepened. Elian blinked slowly, and the archway seemed to shimmer. The air in the room felt softer, as though the fire's warmth had thickened into velvet. The tapping of rain became more musical, less like random drops and more like a gentle, repeating phrase. Elian didn't stand. There was no need. The chair held steady. The throw remained warm. The mug waited. Instead, Elian simply watched. The archway shape on the pane became clearer, as if the rain had decided to draw it with a little more confidence. Drops slid along its edges, reinforcing the curve. The space beneath it stayed darker, deeper, and in that darkness, there was movement. Not the movement of a person, not the movement of something solid, but the movement of depth. Like looking into a forest at night and sensing there is more inside than you can see. Elian's breath stayed slow. There was no fear, only a gentle wonder, the kind that feels like noticing a hidden garden behind a familiar wall. The darkness beneath the archway seemed to open. And then, very softly, the window pane reflected a different place. It was still rain, still night. But the view beyond the glass no longer looked like the quiet town square. Instead, it looked like a path. A narrow path made of smooth stones, glistening with rain, winding through trees that held their leaves like cupped hands. Lanterns hung from branches, their light hazy through droplets, casting soft circles on the wet ground. The air looked misty, thick with calm. Everything shimmered with moisture, as though the world itself had been freshly washed. Elian stared, not in shock, but in slow, dreamy recognition, as if this place had always existed somewhere behind the rain. The tapping on the window became the sound of rain on leaves, on stones, on lantern glass. And somewhere within that reflected path, A quiet promise of rest seemed to deepen. Elian's eyelids lowered again, and when they lifted, the path remained. It wasn't demanding attention. It wasn't calling loudly. It simply existed, offering itself like a lullaby offers itself. If you want it, you can follow. Elian's body remained in the chair, safe and warm. Yet the mind, that gentle drifting thing, began to move. In the mind's quiet space, Elian stepped onto the rain-slick path. The sensation was immediate and soothing. The air felt cool and clean, fragrant with wet bark and moss. The rain wasn't heavy, it was a soft veil, a fine, steady fall that kissed skin without chilling. The stones beneath felt smooth and stable, each one offering a firm place for a foot to land. Lanterns swayed slightly in the wind, their flames protected by glass. The light they cast was warm and sleepy, like candlelight on a bedside table. Elian walked slowly, not needing to hurry. Each step felt like an exhale. The path curved gently, guiding without confusion. Trees stood on either side, their branches forming a loose canopy that caught some of the rain. Drops gathered on leaves and fell now and then with a soft plink, adding another layer to the rain's rhythm. Somewhere ahead the path widened, and Elian could see a small structure, perhaps a pavilion, perhaps a cottage, nestled among the trees. Its roof shone with water, and the windows glowed with the same warm light as Elian's own room. As Elian approached, the rain's sound shifted. It changed from tapping on leaves to tapping on roof tiles, a steady, comforting drumming. The smell of wood smoke drifted through the air, familiar and reassuring. The structure was a small house made of dark wood, with a porch that wrapped around it like a gentle embrace. A wind chime hung near the door, its tones soft and low, barely audible beneath the rain. Elian stepped onto the porch. The boards beneath were dry, protected by the roof. The air here was warmer, and the lantern near the door cast a sleepy circle of light. The door was slightly open, as though it had been waiting, shining as though it had been in the rain, shining as though it had been in the rain for a long time. Shelves held books with soft, worn spines. A blanket lay folded on a couch, its fabric thick and inviting. The whole place felt like a pause. Not a place where anything had to happen, but a place where nothing needed to happen. Elian stepped inside, and the door eased shut behind, muffling the rain to a softer hush. The sound became more intimate, like rain on window panes in a quiet room. There was a window here too, large and wide, looking out onto the lantern-lit trees. Rain slid down its glass in gentle trails. The view beyond blurred and softened, as if the world outside were turning into watercolor. Elian moved toward that window, drawn by the familiar rhythm. The glass was cool when fingertips brushed it. Drops chased each other down the pane, meeting and parting, drawing their slow maps. On the sill sat a small object, a smooth piece of glass shaped like a teardrop, clear and faintly blue. It held a tiny bubble inside like a captured breath. Elian picked it up. It was cool and heavy in the palm, comforting in its solidity. When Elian held it up to the light, it caught the glow from the fire and turned it into a soft, amber shimmer. As Elian looked through it, the rain on the window seemed to slow even more. The droplets became clearer, each one a tiny lens, and within those droplets there were images. Not sharp images, not demanding scenes, but gentle glimpses. A quiet lake in rain, ripples spreading softly, a field of tall grass swaying beneath a misty sky, a small street lamp glowing over wet stones in a sleeping town. Each image felt like a memory that belonged to no one and everyone, the shared language of peaceful places. Elian turned the glass teardrop slowly, and the images shifted. Now it showed a room with a warm chair by a window, a mug on a small table, a throw folded over an armrest. It was Elian's own room seen from a distance, glowing like a lantern in the dark. The sight filled Elian with a deep, gentle comfort, as though the world were reminding Elian, you are safe, you are held, you can rest. The glass teardrop was set back on the sill, and Elian let the fingers rest there for a moment, feeling the coolness, grounding. In the quiet house, the fire crackled softly. The rain whispered against the window. The couch waited with its folded blanket, a promise of warmth. Elian moved toward the couch and sat, sinking into the cushion as though sinking into calm water. The blanket was lifted and draped over legs. It was heavy enough to feel secure, light enough to feel easy. The air in the house was filled with the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. It felt full of soft sounds of warm light, of the steady presence of rain. Elian listened. The rain here had layers. There was the faint patter on the roof, the gentle tap on the window, the occasional drop falling from a leaf outside with a soft plink. Beneath it all, the subtle hush of the world settling into night. Elian's breathing slowed again, matching the rhythm. Inhale like drawing in warmth. Exhale like letting go. Somewhere a clock might have been ticking, but if it was too gentle to matter. The house seemed to encourage stillness. Elian's gaze drifted toward the bowl of polished stones on the table. Each stone was different. Some were dark and smooth, some pale with tiny speckles, some streaked with lines like frozen rivers. They all shone with a soft sheen, as though they had been loved by water. Elian reached over and picked one up. It was warm, surprisingly, as if it had been resting near the fire. It fit perfectly in the palm, a small weight that felt steady and calming. As Elian held it, the stone seemed to carry a feeling, quiet, patient, enduring, like a river rock that has been shaped by water for a long time, never resisting, never rushing, simply becoming smoother through gentle persistence. Elian closed eyes for a moment, holding the stone, and listened to the rain. In that listening, thoughts began to dissolve further, like ink in water. They didn't vanish with force. They simply thinned, faded, softened. When Elian opened eyes again, the room seemed even warmer, even gentler. The fire's light danced on the walls. The rain's trails on the window had become slow, luminous lines. And then Elian noticed something else. On the far side of the room, near another window, there was a door that hadn't been noticed before. It wasn't hidden exactly. It was simply quiet, blending into the wood-paneled wall. A simple handle, a faint outline. It felt like an invitation, not urgent, not necessary, but available. Elian rose from the couch with slow ease, still holding the warm stone, and walked toward the door. The blanket was left behind, folded softly where it had been. The steps were quiet on the wooden floor. At the door, Elian paused. The rain's sound was steady behind, like encouragement. Elian opened the door. Beyond it was a small conservatory made mostly of glass. The roof was glass, the walls were glass, and beyond that glass, the rain fell in a steady, gentle curtain. The conservatory was filled with plants, ferns, ivy, small trees in pots, and flowering vines that climbed trellises. Everything was lush and damp and thriving, as if the rain had been feeding this place for a long time. The air smelled of wet soil and green leaves. It was the scent of life continuing quietly. A bench sat in the center, cushioned with soft fabric. Above it, the rain tapped on the glass roof, making a sound like 1,000 gentle fingertips. The effect was hypnotic, soothing beyond words. Elian stepped inside and sat on the bench. Here the rain was closer. It surrounded the conservatory, drumming on glass from all sides. Drops slid down the walls in shimmering trails, catching lantern light and turning it into slow-moving stars. Elian leaned back against the cushion, still holding the warm stone, and let the sound wash over. In this space, time felt like it had slowed. The rain's rhythm became a blanket of sound covering everything. It was impossible to hurry here, impossible to be sharp or tense. The sound softened all edges. Outside the glass, the lantern-lit trees swayed gently. Their leaves shone with water. The world beyond was blurred and dreamy, as if it were painted in mist. Inside, plants moved slightly, with the breath of air, their leaves trembling now and then when a drop struck the roof above. Elian's eyes grew heavy. The warm stone in the palm was a small anchor. It reminded Elian of steadiness, of the quiet strength of things that endure without struggle. The rain continued. Tap, 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 soft, steady, patient. Elian's breathing became deeper, slower. Inhale, exhale. The conservatory, the house, the path outside, everything seemed to be part of a single lullaby, sung by water and glass and warm light. As Elian rested, the mind drifted again, deeper this time. The sounds became softer, more distant, as though heard through a cozy layer of fabric. Images floated through Elian's thoughts. The town square under rain, the glow of street lamps on wet stones, the cat darting beneath a bench, the armchair by the window, in the warm room, the way a droplet slid down glass and joined another trail, disappearing without worry. All of it felt connected by the rain's gentle presence. In the conservatory, Elian's hand loosened slightly, and the warm stone rested more gently in the palm. The shoulders sank, the jaw softened, the eyelids lowered further, not forced, just naturally heavy. The rain, always kind, kept tapping. And as Elian drifted, a strange and lovely thought arose that perhaps the window rain truly did have a purpose. Perhaps it came to teach the body what it already knew: how to relax, how to let go, how to surrender to rest without fear. Outside, water slid down glass in slow trails, drawing soft lines that erased sharpness and made the world gentle. Inside, Elian's breath was slow and even. The lanterns beyond the conservatory glowed like distant dreams. The trees swayed. The town, somewhere far behind, slept quietly beneath the same steady rain. And Elian, wrapped in warmth and sound, drifted towards sleep as naturally as a droplet drifting down a window pane. Later, the house of rain and glass remained quiet, holding its warmth. The fire in the hearth burned low and steady. The plants in the conservatory drank in the damp air. The rain continued, its soft drumming on the roof and its gentle tapping on the panes, never rushing, never stopping, abruptly, simply being what it was. In Elian's own room, the armchair by the window sat in the same place, the mug on the table, the throw folded, the stove glowing faintly. The town outside remained calm, the square empty, the fountain dark and still. Somewhere between those places, between the warm room and the rain house, between waking and dreaming, Elian rested. The mind no longer needed to watch the rain closely. The body no longer needed to hold tension. Everything could soften. The rain on the window panes became a lullaby without words. Tap, tap, a soft slide, a quiet hush. Each sound was gentle, each moment was slow, and if any thoughts tried to rise, they found themselves smoothing out like stones in a river. They drifted away on the steady rhythm, dissolving into the night. Breath by breath, the world grew quieter. The rain continued to fall, patient and kind, tracing soft paths down glass, blurring the edges of everything until only comfort remained. The room was warm. The darkness was safe. The sound was steady. Sleep arrived the way it always does when it's allowed to arrive, slowly, gently, without effort. And as the rain tapped on the window panes, the night held you softly. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.